Welcome to Flagship Studios. I'm here with Dr. Chris Austin, the CEO of Vesalius Therapeutics. And Chris, I'm going to dive right in with some questions.
Good.
Vesalius is tackling the treatment of common illness. Talk a little bit about how you define common illness and why it's so important.
Yeah. Common illnesses are defined as having a prevalence in the United States, that is a number of people affected of 200,000 people or more. And these are all the diseases that we all know about and fear. Parkinson's disease, inflammatory bowel disease, chronic kidney failure, chronic heart failure, Alzheimer's disease. These are all common illnesses which account for an enormous public health burden on our society, and societies are all around the world.
Right, and you know, you launched Vesalius a year ago, so lots has happened in between, but can you talk a little bit about your accomplishments and what's happened over the past year?
Yeah, sure. It's been a busy year since our announcement in
Absolutely.
March. And I always think about this in four dimensions: our platform, our programs, our people, and our business. And our platform has really performed in the last year. We've developed a number of really exciting novel drug targets across multiple therapeutic areas. We've advanced multiple of those programs now to late lead optimization with a view to the clinic, we hope by the end of next year. On the people side, we've made very important hires in science, in business development, in operations, and in finance. We've also taken great pains to further expand our IP coverage to make sure that we've covered both our platform, components of the platform, and the platform as a whole, as well as the individual programs and the composition of matter for the compounds that we're developing.
Well, on the topic of platform, talk a little bit about what that means to be a platform company, what the possibilities are when you are a platform company.
Platform companies are the way to go. I've done platforms my whole career because they build. Every success builds on the ones that come before it. And when you build a platform to be a learning platform, a learning system, then cycle times decrease, success rates increase over time, and they become more and more applicable to more and more therapeutic areas with decreased effort. And this is really the way to go, particularly for the very broad applications that we're looking at, which are the diseases, these common diseases that are responsible for 90% of human suffering and death. 90% of morbidity and mortality is caused by these illnesses. And so the potential for this platform is absolutely enormous. And so we're working very hard to do exactly what I said, to not only continue to develop the platform and its expansibility, but decrease the cycle time, increase efficiency, so that we can deliver not only new targets, but new therapies, and we can do clinical trials with shorter times and smaller trials with higher probability of success. And that's what we're doing at Vesalius.
And you said you've worked with platforms your whole career, but you made quite a career, I wouldn't say pivot, but change to come to Flagship and to come to Vesalius. Why personally for you is this so important at this time in your life?
Well, I started out my career as a doctor. And I first got into drug development because I found that virtually all the patients that I saw, we didn't understand what caused their illness, and we couldn't do anything to treat them. And I decided I just had to make that better. And I decided that genetics was the way to do that. And so that led me to a completely separate training in genetics, and then led me to Merck, where we were applying what was then pre-Human Genome Project genetics to developing new drug targets and new therapies for human disease. And from there, I went to be the translation person after the Genome Project was finished, and then started a new institute at the NIH that I started from scratch, and 20 years later was $1 billion a year operation. And we worked with companies across the world to develop therapies in new ways. But what we didn't do at NIH, and we shouldn't, it was not our job, is to go to the goal line, actually get therapeutics fully developed through phase 3 clinical trials, through registration, and into patients' hands. And it was very important for me to take this next step in my career, in many ways to go back where I started in pharma, but I found Flagship and the whole platform ethos that that Flagship has, fits my ethos so well as its it's real honest devotion to important social impact. And this is something that we talk about all the time around here, and it's real. And I really jibed with that, and that's what brought me here.
That's great. And thinking to the future, maybe the near future,
Yeah.
what will we see from Vesalius, or maybe what won't we see?
Yeah.
What's happening behind the scenes and externally over the next year?
Yeah, it's going to be a big year for Vesalius. At the beginning of this year, in fact, we started development of version 2.0 of the platform based on the successes of 1.0, which I mentioned before. And we'll see some really exciting results from that, I think, by the end of this year. Secondly, our first two programs that are now in late lead-up will be driving those toward the clinic. And thirdly, we'll be building out our C-suite and building out our board of directors, as well as expanding our scientific advisory board, and all of this to really turbocharge the growth of the company.
And just shifting gears a little bit to think about culture, talk a little bit about what it's like to work at Vesalius. Clearly, people coming in every day are likely excited about the impact and the big ambition of the company, but what's it like inside the walls of Vesalius?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something I think about a lot, because as the famous Peter Drucker said, you probably know this quote, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Mm-hmm. And so you really have to get the culture right of the organization. And that culture, it needs to be a combination of prudent risk-taking, constant learning, complete frankness and honesty with what the data actually show us and don't show us, and an ability to constantly evolve personally and organizationally with the data that we're generating. You know, I often think about this in my other one of my other vocations, which is wilderness trekking, and in that kind of situation, if you're going somewhere that nobody's ever been before, you always have a plan, but the plan falls apart generally within a day, and you're improvising depending on what the environment turns out to give you, and that's exactly what working at Vesalius is like. It's the only way to go as far as both fulfillment and human impact, which is why we're all in this game, and in this business, I should say, and I think that really drives people at Vesalius. You know, the idea that if we're successful, we will help well over 1 billion people on this planet. And I don't know about you, but that's a reason to get up in the morning.
Absolutely, and it's we're here at J.P. Morgan at Flagship talking about bigger leaps, and I can't really think of a bigger leap than what you're talking about here. Yeah. What are some of the leaps that you see if you think a bit out, 3, 5, even longer from now for Vesalius?
I think what we're going to see is that common diseases are thought of in a fundamentally different way. We will be developing treatments for them in fundamentally different ways. We will diagnose them in fundamentally different ways and treat them in fundamentally different ways. You know, as I look back to my training as a doctor almost 40 years ago now, most of the common diseases that I trained to treat have had no advance whatsoever since I was in training, despite all the advances in science. And I find that astounding. But the real excitement about Vesalius and what brought me here is that I am absolutely convinced that the time is now to take everything we've learned from genetics, from all the wonderful work on rare diseases that we all know about and I've done a lot of more complex, sophisticated clinical data, the ability to use human-based testing systems as opposed to animals or engineered systems, to put all that together for the first time, to do what I think about as the major leagues. And the major leagues are these major public health problems that have been so resistant to advances over the last 3, 4, 5 decades, all the time that I've been in this field. And so what's the secret of this? The secret at Vesalius is to redefine clinically what these patients have, find out exactly what do they have, what are their clinical symptoms and signs and their prognosis, their response to drug, and then to look at those people's genetics and combine all of the various genetic abnormalities those people have into what we call gene circuits, which are the fundamental unit of activity of the human body, identify drug targets within those circuits that then can be targeted with a drug to return the circuit back to homeostasis, back to normal, and thereby treat the disease in that patient population. That's a fundamentally different way of thinking about what common diseases are and how to conceptualize their diagnosis and treatment. And this promises to have the same kind of impact in common diseases as we've begun to see in the rare diseases. And I think that, when I first got into rare diseases 25 years ago, there was no paradigm for rare diseases. There is now. And that kind of transformation is going to happen in common diseases, I believe, in the next 5 years, I hope, 10 years at the most. And I've got to tell you, that's a world that I think we could all look forward to.
No, it's an inspiration. What you're doing is critical, and we look forward to seeing the progress and the advancements that Vesalius will make. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Today.
Thank you.
Thank you.